Hi everyone, this is Shilpa and Mary, your host of the podcast Simplify XM, and I'm back again with a new episode. Today we will talk about crisis management in CX. I think it took a pandemic for many organizations to realize that customer experience is actually a great benefit, or good customer experience is a great benefit to have during times of crisis, for customers to be more loyal to you even when the whole world is, breaking down around you. A lot of organizations realize that, but unfortunately, a lot of these organizations also did not have a foundation upon which they could build customer experience really fast. Now, but some organizations did do well. And the differentiator was there were initiatives, there was realization of experience management in the company even before pandemic. So anyway, I think there will be success stories and failures all the time. Today, we will talk about how we can actually convert a crisis into an opportunity for us. So I'm really glad to invite Mary Catherine to our podcast today. She's the Vice President of Autodesk Customer Success Design. And what I really loved about her when I met her a couple of years ago was I loved the depth that she was bringing into the discussion, something that was so refreshing because, it was very clear that she was in the trenches and she was talking about the issues that she's doing day to day and some really creative ways of solving them. So I'm excited to have her. The way that I look at her is she brings a customer experience lens to the go-to-market strategies that our organizations work day in and day out, but most often it's, inside out. But she brings in the fresh outside in look that is really needed for a successful strategy. So before further ado, I would love to welcome Mary. Hi, Mary. Why don't we start with a quick introduction from you?
Sure. So as Shilpa said, I lead the customer success design practice at Autodesk. And for folks that might not know Autodesk, we are a design and make platform company. We work with architects, engineers, manufacturers, media and entertainment companies to really empower them to design and make a better world. And so we've got customers all around the world. I think over 160 countries, customers use Autodesk. And we're also a company that's been around for a long time, a couple of decades. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how you bring customer experience and some customer experience practices to a company that's maybe been around for a long time, that has a lot of customers who've been with us for a really long time. I'm so super excited to have that conversation today.
The pleasure is all mine. So tell me, you have had such a long experience. What's the most exciting part of being a customer experience leader?
Yeah, so I am actually pretty new to customer experience. So my background is in science. I actually have a master's degree in biochemistry, and I've done a lot of work in go-to-market strategy over the years. And a couple of years ago, I pivoted into customer experience leadership because I'm obsessed with human-centered design and also obsessed with how to bring a human-centered design approach to go-to-market. So how do you think about your marketing, sales, and customer success motions differently? And the thing that I love about customer experiences, especially being someone somewhat newer to the field, is the depth and breadth that customer experience professionals need to really create that team sport around customer experience. You've got to understand culture. You have to understand survey methodology best practices. You have to understand facilitation and alignment with stakeholders. You have to understand project management. So I love that it brings these things that I've always been really interested in my career all kind of into one place and really getting to use some of those skills to really drive change for the company.
That's an excellent point, Mary. Oftentimes, when people ask me, so how do you start a career in customer experience? It's so hard, right? There is no specific skill set for CX. It's really a combination of multiple skill sets that you learn over many years in your career journey. And the most critical part being you should have the customer lens or perspective with you. And I think a firm belief that you should lead by customer. I think that's the only requirement. If anyone asks me, that's what I say. Start with the customer and use all the transferable skills that you could come up with. So excellent, excellent. And thanks for sharing that journey with us over here. Last time when we talked about in our conversation, there was a sentence that you said that I really liked. You said, I think it was your boss who said that never waste a good crisis. And that was fun. Like, such a great way of looking at a crisis. Tell me more about what triggered that statement from your manager and what happened there.
Yeah. So Elizabeth Sorens is our chief customer officer at Autodesk. And she joined the company a couple years ago. And I think has really brought refreshing perspective to how we think about customer experience and some of those important investments we need to make in our customers. And we were dealing with a situation with our technology managers, that persona who's really responsible for adopting and using our products, our Autodesk technology in companies. And we've been getting a lot of feedback for quite a while from technology managers who are finding it hard to use our products, deal with our licensing models. We'd introduced a lot of change in how they were licensing and using Autodesk technology over the years. And so that feedback was kind of building up into a crescendo. And we actually had a letter that our customers wrote to Autodesk that was highlighting some of the things that they really felt that needed to be changed. And one of those was the frustrations that admins had around managing and using our software and getting their employees access to our software. And so Elizabeth was really framing that up as a unique opportunity for customer experience. Because when you hear from customers, it's easy to just read the survey responses and kind of be like, oh, yes, they're complaining again. But to have a moment when execs are really paying attention and knowing that that's a moment that you can turn into action and do something that's going to be really, really positive for our customers, that's how we often think about crises being an opportunity.
That's very smart, I must say. And to have the executives actually listen and not just say, oh, we knew about that and really not do anything about it, I think that's a game changer. So, what happened next?
So, the story with our technology managers, I really applaud our customers for being able to give us that critical feedback and do it in such an open and public way. And we were able to also get some of our executives or product leaders who were meeting with some of these customers and hearing from them firsthand some of the pain points that they had with our technology. And it was things like, for example, we had moved to this model where now you could actually have users, specific users using a software title. And because of how we had some of our policies set up, when they would log in to see that information, it was like hashed to them. So they couldn't actually see which users were using the software. And so a lot of them had a couple of different really good points of this is really frustrating. Could you please do something about it? And because our executives heard the customers, heard directly from them, we were able to translate that feedback into a roadmap where we mapped out the pain points that those technology managers had, the areas where we were going to make some investments and actually work with the product teams. I think we prioritized, it was over 30 different features for admins that really had a material impact in their ability to do their job. And that was something that we rolled out over the course of 12 or 18 months. And we saw a huge response in terms of improved net promoter scores from that cohort, positive feedback from that cohort, and just knowing that we really actually made a tangible difference to the lives of those admins and the positive sentiment that they carried forward from that made a huge difference.
What was different about this letter versus all other complaints that came from the customers before? I'm sure they talked about this issue before as well.
Yeah. So I think one thing was it was very public. So it was like a public letter that they published that
Right?
got picked up in the media. I think the second thing was it was actually the customers synthesizing and sharing back their feedback with Autodesk from their perspective. So instead of various different support cases or different pieces of feedback coming through, it was actually kind of organized from the customer side saying, hey, these are like our top 10 issues that we're really struggling with that we want Autodesk to address. And so having the customers kind of summarize their top pain points and feeding it back to us, and then us being able to validate. It wasn't just the ones who signed the letter. There were other people who were also struggling with those same issues. It really made it easy to build that business case for making those customer experience improvements because the public sentiment, the way that the information was shared back with us, it was like instead of having to dig through and mine through the data and build your customer experience improvement business case, it was just right there for us to take and run with it.
Yeah. I mean, and you don't want to be in the news for the wrong reasons. say that any news is good news, but I don't know in this case if it was good news in any way for Autodesk. Were there any lessons that kind of like were sticky with this whole experience for you, your team, and the organization as such?
Yeah, I think a couple lessons. So, one is the importance of closing the loop with customers. So, I think we wouldn't have been nearly as successful if we hadn't actually played back to the customers all the things that we were doing to really improve the experience along the way. Because that didn't happen overnight. It was like a multi quarter, 12-month investment in making improvements. And we actually set up an advisory board with customers with some of those most vocal admins to really take them on that journey with us and get early feedback, have them help us prioritize areas to focus on, but also making sure we weren't just listening to the squeaky wheel, that we were taking that feedback from that advisory board and making sure that it was relevant to all the customers that we were really serving, all of those admins. So I think that was one is make sure you're bringing the customers along the way and then also, the other thing that we did was set up a cross functional group that had some shared metrics around improving that admin experience. So, when we aligned on 6 to 8 major pain points we were going after, we actually had a scorecard we would send out every month, showing what progress we were making, what feedback we were getting from customers, and using that as one of the inputs into those roadmap conversations with the product team. So, taking a really disciplined approach to continuing to look at that feedback and getting ahead early of any other trends, positive or negative, that were coming up during that journey.
I think that's a very smart way that as part of this crisis, you ended up also creating a customer advisory board, recurring, consistent, and reliable group to gather feedback directly from customers. That's smart. You just build infrastructure that allows you to focus on your customer in a different way, moving away from the survey fatigue that we are seeing in the industry right now. Like, not many are really just any industry, not just the industries that Autodesk serves, and actually having the precious time with the customer to gather feedback. I have a hunch that possibly the kind of success that we got with in driving these experience led changes may have something to do with the direction from the top, the investment from the top that's coming in. And I also believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, of course, there are smart people and groups who could turn this around in a day. In a week's time, I'm going to set up the infrastructure and I can accomplish what you have done. Like, there are some really lucky people who could do that. But I don't believe to turn around a crisis like this was built with no foundation in. Rome was not built in a day. Was that the case at Autodesk as well?
Yeah, I think it's a really excellent point because I think a lot of customer experience professionals would agree that it's a real slog to build customer experience momentum in a company because you're constantly having to go back to stakeholders and remind them of what the customers are saying and why that's important and how to take action. And so we've actually, for the past couple of years, been working a lot with our C suite executives on providing them with regular feedback from our Voice of Customer program. And I think one of the things that really ended up making a difference there was being able to understand what they were most interested in hearing feedback around and how they wanted to interpret and understand that data. And one of the things that was really important for our CEO was understanding the statistical significance of a trend. So being able to say, like, okay, so we're seeing that the NPS data is trending this way, or our key drivers are trending this way. Does it really matter? So we're not just like writing a report like 2 points up, 3 points down, having something that's a bit more like, okay, this is a meaningful pattern or a meaningful trend that we're seeing that we really need to pay attention to and take action around. So kind of getting that framework in place and building that trust and credibility with our executive team on the customer sentiment data and knowing how they could trust it, I think really made a big difference. And then when we were turning that into a customer experience business case and a set of improvements, we could really rely on those sentiment metrics to make everyone feel more comfortable that we were doing the right thing and making the right bets.
Understood. So I want to dig deeper into this a little bit here. Basically, what you're saying is for the organization to really appreciate the feedback that you were getting, you had to put your customer in mind. In this case, it was CEO, your customer's needs, and develop a product that meets your CEO's needs so that he or she can actually read the report and act on it. So you have an external customer, but you also have an internal customer. So every CX team, and you correctly pointed out that it's actually hard to build that sentiment and change the culture. You have to keep influencing without authority. So you have an external customer whose voice that voice CX teams usually represent, but all our work needs to be tuned to our internal customers' needs. That's hard, isn't it?
It is so hard. And I think it's one of the things I love about customer experience because it's an opportunity to tell that story of your customers and what they're trying to tell you as a company in a way that other people can actually take action on it. Yeah, I would say that a real focus for our customer experience team is taking action. Like we don't want our reports like sitting on in someone's email. Maybe they read it and they don't do anything about it. Like we really measure our success on the ability to actually get people to embrace what our customers are telling us and like use that to inform changes they want to make in the experience, whether it's our product teams or our field service teams or our sales organization. Really helping people understand how to interpret the feedback we're hearing from customers, like how to differentiate and distinguish fact from anecdote, and then helping them really figure out how do you take meaningful action on that customer experience and close the loop. And so that's been a real focus of our program. It's kind of like the basics. I know today in customer experience, people talk a lot about AI and like moving the unstructured data, and all those things are really important. And we're doing those too. But I just don't think anything replaces like that basic,
Yeah.
like bread and butter of like, what are the customers saying? What do we want to take from that? And then how do we really turn that into action?
That's such a great point. Like in my past episodes, I have talked about AI and with a bit of eye roll, not because AI is not good. It's just that do we even have the basics right to start thinking about using AI? Like you're probably at the elementary school level and we are talking about PhD here, and that foundation needs to be built. I love that. And I love the fact that you mentioned you focus on implementing CXs driven around action. It's a very common thing for many CX teams to keep sending these reports. And then there's like, it sits in the inbox, no one looks at it. And we're going about doing the same thing. And you mentioned how you had customized your reports to your CEO's needs, which is very smart. Did you do the same with the entire executive leadership team? Was it specific reports based on each department? Tell me a little bit more because it's very interesting. We have to influence without authority. And seems like a way to do that is actually bringing the aspect of their skin in the game, right? That what do they get out of this?
Yeah, I love that, and it's so true. And we always have this debate within our CX practice on the level of customization that we do around insights and like where do we push people to self-serve versus where are we kind of doing analysis that's more custom. And where we've kind of netted out is thinking about how we produce that insight and recommendation and tying it into the kind of action a particular team's going to take. So, for example, we have kind of the report we send out to the exec team, and that's really focused around like, what are the biggest trends? What is moving? And like, are we hitting any blockers in terms of experience improvements that we're trying to make progress on with the different teams? Sometimes that results in some phone calls to folks who we are like, hey, we're having a real trouble breaking through here because we can't get XYZ resourced. But we really use that exec report to drive that kind of top level strategic action. When we're sitting down with the product teams, especially the product teams that own the digital parts of our go to market experience, we're really focused on what do we need to equip those product managers with so that they can understand customer feedback about a particular moment in the journey, particular things that are touching their product, whether it's the folks that are working on the support experience or on the trial experience or the purchasing experience, and giving them color commentary so that they can use that as an input into their product roadmap. So it kind of depends on, because we own a lot of different survey programs and now we're moving into more text analytics and unstructured feedback, really tailoring how we present that information to the different teams to make it easy for them to incorporate it into their decision making process. So it's a little bit of both. We try not to make a lot of reports that no one reads, but then we also are trying to strike the right balance of making it tailored enough so that they're able to do something with it.
A great point, because it shows the multi-layered strategy that CX teams need to bring in to win hearts and minds around customer centricity in their own departments, right? And the other aspect that's like really bringing this all together, which is what we started off with. How do you change careers into CX? Which is when you have people with varied experience of project management, strategy, technical skills of actually building these reports, and also analytical skills. Like there's just so much in there and so many different people who come together to deliver a successful program like this. Really, really love that. Let me come to my most favorite question, and I promise it's the last question. I have learned a lot already from you. Tell me about a brand that's not Autodesk that you think personally really does CX well, and you could see that okay, they must have had a solid program to deliver this experience to me.
Yeah. So my communications team said explicitly, why don't you mention Autodesk as a great leader? So I'm going to say a little bit about some of the things I think we do
Okay,
well
we
and
have to
cheat.
listen to our communications team, so I'll give you that.
And then I'll give you an example of another brand I'm super fond of. So I think when I think about what great experience looks like in B2B, especially for tech companies, it's pretty hard. I think tech companies who really do experience well in the B2B space, you have like multiple different stakeholders. You have your buying committee, you have your end users. Typically, the experiences aren't like in the consumer space where you have one person doing a job and you can kind of really optimize around that experience. It tends to be much more multi-layered, omni-channel, and like involving a lot of different people at the company. And I think for Autodesk, we are really focused on connecting our customer experience strategy to some of the things that we have, the motions we have with our customers, and making sure we're really building trusted partnerships with them and unlocking value and tying that all the way through from strategy into execution. I think one of the brands that I love some of the things they're doing is Atlassian. So they're really focused on remote work. They have a huge push around how to really help teams collaborate remotely. And they've got these really great resources that are available for you folks that are trying to run a remote team and think about how to do collaboration well. And I think there's just different elements of the way that they show up as a brand where they're really linking their values as a brand into the experiences they're creating for their customers. So if I had to pick one that wasn't Autodesk, I would say Atlassian.
I love that example. Sometimes all it needs is resources that the customers can look up by themselves, right? You don't need that as many people as you would think. I always believe simplicity always wins. Like there's so many solutions that are really simple and we don't think about it until it becomes a crisis, apparently.
Yep.
So
I agree.
I love discussing crisis and CX today, Mary. What I took from this discussion is never waste a good crisis. I guess that's the first lesson. There are always ways to save that situation and something great could come out of it. But also, it is really, really beneficial if for CX teams and for the philosophy of CX being part of the fabric of the company when you have support from the top, when it's driven from the top. And oftentimes, getting that support could be tricky. And that's where customer centricity, even within CX teams, becomes important. You have external customer that you're representing, but your internal customer are these game trendsetters and leaders who could drive a lot of action within their departments. That means you have to give them what they are seeking and show them their skin in the game. And finally, I really loved where you mentioned about, having these reports, these insights that we're giving, they need to be driven by action. At the end of the day, your CEO continued supporting you because he started seeing action and results out of it. And I think that's a very, very important aspect of a successful customer experience program. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Mary. This was great. Did I miss anything that you would like to add?
Oh, and Shilpa, I just want to give you the cherry on top of the sundae in our story around crisis and how to take customer feedback and really drive action around it. So I mentioned our technology managers and the improvements we are making for them and the advisory board that we had set up. And one of the recent meetings of the advisory board, one of our most vocal critics, who was like one of the authors of that original letter that the customer sent to us, said in the advisory board what a difference he's noticed in the improvements
Wow.
that we've made to the admin experience. And it was a reminder to me that we really need to celebrate those wins. So when we're bringing people along, we're asking them to make these investments, we're asking product teams to make changes to their roadmaps to incorporate feedback from the customers. Being able to share back with them, like it really matters. Like people notice
Yeah.
and their perception of Autodesk as a brand is going to change simply because we listened to them and we partnered with them on something that was going to make a difference in their daily life and how they interact with us as a brand. And so I just love that we were able to kind of like bring that crisis full circle and have some of the folks who were most skeptical and like most vocal, like actually saying that they had noticed the improvements we made and like really appreciated that Autodesk was listening.
I'm very sure you slept better that night.
I did. It slept like a baby. So
That's
there's always
awesome.
more to do, but I'm going to take the win. So,
Yes, I hope you and your team celebrated that feedback because it's worth celebrating. And that's why we do this. So what a
yeah.
great story. Thank you for sharing that, Mary. And thank you for agreeing to be on this podcast and giving us such valuable lessons in crisis in CX. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.